Welcome to BDO's Legal Tech Talk podcast. We're joined by judges and legal professionals to discuss emerging trends, regulatory updates, and the latest headlines. We'll provide tips to help your law firms and legal departments make the most out of legal technology. I'm Daniel Gold, BDO Principal and eDiscovery Managed Services Leader.
And I'm Eric Dirk, BDO's Managing Director of Legal Operations. Let's get started with this episode's exciting discussion.
Welcome back to another edition of BDO's Legal Tech Talk podcast. Eric and I are really excited to be sitting down here in the virtual recording studio with Stephen Rittberger. He is the Director of Legal Operations at OpenText. And what's so interesting that we're going to dig into here today, Eric, is that what I have learned about Stephen is that his career basically is a blueprint for how legal departments can be more successful in embracing transformation and innovation with purpose and precision. That, to me, I feel like is the big thing that we're going to take away from today's episode. And what's interesting also is that we're going to learn more, obviously, from Stephen at the LegalOps.com Running Legal Like a Business conference that is going to be taking place in Las Vegas. And so we're really excited about that as well. Stephen, welcome to the show. There's so much that we want to go into with you today, from eliminating efficiencies, breaking down silos, improving visibility across legal functions, and of course, being able to embrace AI. So welcome to the recording studio. It's nice to have you here.
Thanks so much, Daniel. Thanks, Eric. I'm honored to be on this and excited to share some of my perspectives and, my story with your audience.
Well, that's fantastic. Let's start there. Tell us a little bit about your story. And because you didn't start inside of legal operations, you started outside of legal ops, and you are now in this world. And it's so interesting because you bring a different perspective than other people that just started off in legal ops. So tell us a little bit about your story.
Yeah, it has been an interesting path. And, I've kind of arrived at where I am today by taking a go where you're needed type of approach to my career. And that's taking roles within an organization that may seem scary, or a role that I may not feel like I'm ready for, but if that's where the business needed me, jumping in, getting started, and being successful. But with that said, it started 15 years ago as a environmental consultant, where I implemented SAP for oil and gas companies. I supported oil and gas companies in their annual GHG emissions and reporting. From there, I moved on to Accenture. That role there at Accenture, I was implementing SAP as well, but that expanded out of just EHS to environment, health, and safety, into maintenance and operations. I ended up leading the North America SAP asset management function or domain for Accenture. And then, by the time I left, I was leading large-scale global ERP implementations, for Fortune 500 companies. What kind of made me, or what prompted the shift to legal operations, was largely just some personal items that had come up in my life. My mother had been diagnosed with cancer, my son diagnosed with dyslexia, and being in consulting can be very demanding on your time. And I knew I needed to find a different career that would allow me to give my time that I needed to my family. I was fortunate enough to get connected with Jessica Vanderplug. She saw my background and experience as an asset, even though it was not directly related to legal operations, but she saw, my background in tech innovation, tech transformation as something that would be a valuable asset in a legal operations type role. And that's when I moved to Micro Focus, working under her. Since then, we've been acquired by OpenText, and now I am Director of Legal Operations at OpenText and leading the legal operations function.
Thanks for the personal insights. It's really amazing when we come to our jobs every day. We talk about work-life balance, and sometimes life gets in the way of work and work gets in the way of life, right?
Absolutely.
It sounds like you and I have had somewhat similar paths. We've worked in large corporate infrastructure type projects and routines. I've specialized in legal, but I'm just dying to ask you this question. So getting exposed to the legal industry within a corporation like Micro Focus and then OpenText, what were some of the things that you saw right away, like, wow, this is just not how the rest of the world functions. Like, one of the things that we always laugh about is, legal's always been late to the game when it comes to transformation. You have IT tax and HR that have all gone through their own transformations. But legal has been a little bit late to the game. And just curious to get your thought on why that might be, or maybe your experience is different. Maybe it's actually, you're in a place where you're leading a charge for transformation that others may not be aware of.
Yeah, and that was one of the things I noticed right off the bat. Was I was a bit surprised at how far behind legal appeared to be as a function in data tech adoption. And it's also what keeps me motivated and interested today, because legal seems like one of the kind of last frontiers when we talk about true digital transformation within an enterprise. But I remember coming into the office one day and seeing one of our attorneys walk in the front door with arms full of papers and just take them into a conference room. And he did that every day. And I was like, oh, wow. There's a mindset of liking to work on paper. And that's just not something that I had been part of as, implementing ERPs and large scale digital transformations. You never saw anybody with paper. People didn't even take notes on notebooks. So that's been something that's, I think, surprising and also very motivating and exciting for me in this role, because there's so much room for opportunity and, being able to start gathering the data so that we can make real data-driven decisions that have a meaningful impact within our department across the business is very exciting to me.
So much to dig in here. Okay, so let's start with the fact that I was one of those lawyers with paper underneath my hands. It's the way we grew up, I think, with a lot of lawyers, especially lawyers that have been doing this, graduated in the 90s and the 2000s, is just had paper. And still to this day, I know law firms that are just, they have a lot of paper. So here you are coming in and you're fancy consultant, you're an innovator, you are a change maker, you're a difference maker, and you walk in, you see this, right? And let's talk about change management for a second. I have to imagine that you had this 90-day plan of like, here's what I'm going to do. I got this, right? And you walk in and you see something like that. How do you take, and I know you said it's very motivating, so I'm very fascinated about what your direction is here. How do you take this very surprising view of how lawyers are on a day-to-day? It's the last frontier, as you said. So did you have to just like take your 90-day plan and just rip it up, put it in the recycling bin, start again? Or because you don't use paper, it was digitally put it in the recycling bin?
Actually, so my prior experience implementing ERPs actually prepared me really well for working and driving change within an environment like a legal department. And that's because I worked for oil and gas companies, and they are also, when you go to field personnel who, are working on drilling rigs and you're talking about how they're going to start using a new software system to do their maintenance and scheduling, they're not keen on starting that. And so learning how to relate to my stakeholders or the individuals that are going to be kind of going on this transformation journey with me is something that I learned through consulting. And so I was able to apply that in this setting. It's slightly different because you're kind of having to figure out, okay, all these individuals within the legal department, what motivates them? What are the issues they face that if I can help with will help build trust, will help build their buy-in? I didn't come in and say, oh no, I'm like starting from scratch. I have to completely relearn this. But it's change management is difficult always, but so important. And the only way that you can have something be successful is if people are buying in and supportive of the transformation that you're trying to put in place.
One of the things that I've learned over my career is that, active listening is key. But to me, there's always been a barrier. There's the operational work that we do every day, and then there's the legal work. And when you start to get into a perceived intervention in how a lawyer actually does their job, whether they're practicing law or they're just supporting the practice, it can be problematic. And I've definitely learned more from some of my failures in trying to get lawyers to change through new ways of working. They don't love the word process. They're certainly not always driven to use technology to save money or save time. They're really more focused on outcomes. So maybe you could walk us through a couple examples of how you help the lawyer understand, hey, there might be a better way here. Have you considered doing it this way? And kind of sitting and walking through a day in the life of their journey so they can actually build some respect and rapport with you. I mean, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
A couple examples come to mind specific to this. And, one is almost like a mindset shift of, legal's always been kind of a gatekeeper for the business. And I think the future is, yes, remaining as a gatekeeper, but also having a view and lens of a business enabler. And one of the things that we did and we put in place was, say, we built almost like an intake form for our procurement team who was sending in requests, any request. We're buying toilet paper, we need legal to review it. Things that should not be coming to us were coming to us. And so we built this form. They could go, they'd answer some questions. At the end, it would tell them, hey, you're good to go. You don't need to come to legal at all. Move forward. Or it would say, thanks for submitting this. Legal needs to review, and it would get assigned to someone. Just seeing that reduction in volume coming in, like our attorneys really appreciated that. And in making their lives easier, their jobs easier, helps when it comes to then rolling in initiatives that may not have as direct of a benefit to them. And that will get me into my second example. Recently, we rolled out a contract tracker for our commercial legal team. It's essentially a place where our attorneys go and log the various tasks, activities that they do, information about that. Is it a revenue generating agreement, non-revenue generating? Is it on third-party paper or open text paper, etc.? This was not something that attorneys were excited about being rolled out, right? They're like, what do you mean? Now, instead of just me taking care of the task, I have to go into a system and then enter this information about it. And you're going to include how long I spent on it. If I wanted to, enter time, I'd be working for a law firm. But in reality, we're wanting to capture this, not because we want to do checks on, individuals. What are you doing? We want to be able to have insights on where, as a department, where is our effort and energy going that we need to, or that we should focus on maybe finding alternative ways of doing it to free up capacity, to make their jobs easier. We were seeing an inordinate amount of time being spent on NDAs. Can we put in place a NDA self-service where the business can go and without having to engage legal, for a simple template NDA, just automatically get it? Or it could be, how do we educate the business about using open text templates instead of customer paper? If we can convey to them that if they start with open text paper, it's going to speed up processing of their deal or get it to closure, 20% quicker, they'll be motivated to start with that, as opposed to before they may just say, oh, the client sent me their contract, I'll just send this to legal and we'll start with this.
So those are really good examples. And I can't help but think that there's more there, right? So I want to unpack what you said a little bit more. I'm going to ask you a compound question. I'm going to apologize in advance for doing so, but they're related. When I think about the examples that you gave, I'm thinking that, well, there's got to be KPIs in there, key performance indicators, right? And so I want to know if you all, or you in particular, came up with KPIs. And then really my question is then, okay, well, how do you determine then, Stephen, which KPIs to track in legal operations? And how do you ensure that those metrics generate actionable insights and drive the meaningful improvements for the legal department?
As part of this, it wasn't just a tracker that was created. There's a BI dashboard that was also built out that has extensive metrics and ways of slicing the data. I'm also very proud of this whole solution because it was actually built and implemented by one of our commercial attorneys with partnership with our legal ops team. It wasn't something that IT built, so I thought it was, very neat that we were able to do this internally. It started though as anecdotally, this is what we think is happening or what we expect to see, just because, people's stories of we get so much third-party paper, for example. So we started with these kind of base dashboards or KPIs, but then over time, as we saw certain trends start to arise, I would raise other ideas of, okay, let's look at the data in this way. But up until that point, we didn't have data on this. So it was a bit of and continues to be, a journey of transformation just from a KPI perspective of as we get more data, we're able to draw more insights. As we see certain trends, it raises additional questions, et cetera.
Is that something where, you guys are like, hey, legal team, OpenText has all this software and we're going to go ahead and actually utilize the same software that OpenText is going out into the market and selling? Is that something that you guys, or you in particular, are looking to do? Like, hey, OpenText has these, in-house AI functionality. Let's leverage AI that we're selling to the market globally and utilize it in-house for the lawyers.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime we are considering a kind of technology-driven approach to solve a problem, the first and kind of preferred method is, do we sell something at OpenText that we can leverage and use to meet this need? We call it OT trusts OT, but that anytime we're going to start any sort of technology evaluation, we start there. And then, we do use a number of our own tools, whether it be workflow automation or legal hold, et cetera. But that's always where we start. Then there's always, of course, the scenarios where we may not have something that fits. And then we go start to look externally in the market, evaluate various tech providers there, do demos, do trials, et cetera. I think the AI piece is interesting. Interesting in that it's very challenging right now. One, with the landscape, the focus on it, but then also, how do you put something in place in practice? One of our use cases that we're evaluating right now is AI-supported contract review and redlining. I've been having some conversations with our attorneys, and there's different views on what would be preferred, right? So everyone's like, yes, we need to have our OpenText playbook and guidelines set up in whatever system. But then there are some that are like, I want the tool to automatically generate the red lines that can get embedded into the Word document, right away. But then there are others that say, no, I think that takes too much away from the attorney and it makes it too easy for them to think, or I guess to make these changes without thinking or reviewing extensively. So I want to be able to have the AI scan the document, but then just call out, here are the things you need to look at, here are suggested changes, but not have those applied directly in the document. And those have been interesting conversations.
It's a lot about the context, right? I mean, I think when you look at the market, you hear about process and solutions and technology that will solve like a CLM problem. But then when you really dig into it, it's like, well, what's the kind of contract you're talking about? Is it a procurement contract? Is it a legal contract? Is it a transactional, or is it a fixed time? So like when you're buying toilet paper, you might not need to have the same level of scrutiny in a contract as you would when you're buying a company. Obviously, there's different methods and ways to think about using technology. And I think the market will just say, go buy this generative AI drafting tool and it'll help you build clause libraries and your work is done. But I think in many contexts, lawyers want to be able to review every single clause to make sure it's standardized against the primary baseline clauses. And they want to have fallbacks and they want to consider the jurisdiction and essentially the context. So one question that I've always kind of struggled with is, how do you measure internal client satisfaction? In simple terms, the teams that are working on the commercial side, they're trying to sell software, they're trying to engage a new client, then they have to go through the general counsel's office to get a contract completed or evaluate a business issue. How have the business teams responded to some of the initiatives that you've enabled through technology and new process?
And looking at our especially when it comes to AI. Our partnership with IT has been critical from the beginning, not just because of their expertise in evaluating, whatever tools we may be looking at or possible solutions, but they also have a visibility across the enterprise that we may not have. Our other teams looking at solutions that are similar, right? Should we combine efforts to look at things? And that has been and will continue to be extremely important. You had touched on, attorneys sometimes having a reluctance to necessarily change. And, I think that it can be sometimes there can be a untrusting kind of demeanor that can be brought towards, especially these types of solutions. And that's been something that has been really interesting as we trial some of these AI solutions is, are we able to build trust in the tool that it is providing, a thorough review? Or are they still thinking, okay, I ran it, it called out, these potential issues, but I think there's still more that it didn't catch, and I'm just going to review the whole thing anyways. One of the approaches that we've taken for that is, take a agreement as we're doing the trial, take an agreement that you had reviewed in the past, that you'd redlined, put in the blank template, run it against the playbook, and then compare its output to what you had actually redlined and put into that document when you reviewed it, without AI assistance. That's helped. From an operations perspective, it's been interesting to see some different dynamics. And again, this is specific to the AI contract review, but there seems to be two different perspectives. Some vendors giving our end users the ability to kind of create or change their own playbooks, and others that treat it more as like a white glove type of service of, no, you don't make changes to your playbooks, you send it to us. And at first, I saw that as kind of a downside to those solutions because I'm like, I don't want to have to rely on you. But then as we've done additional trials, I've really come to see why they're doing that. And it's because of the importance of how the playbooks are configured, what prompts are put into that AI agent that is going to 100% drive the responses that it puts out. And if you are then giving, say, attorneys who may not be trained in prompting or prompt hygiene, the ability to essentially configure those playbooks, they'll start to get outputs that they are not happy with, that they disagree with, and you end up breaking that trust in that tool. So that's been an interesting thing that I've observed.
Legal teams are struggling to manage resources, maintain compliance, and adopt new technologies. BDO's legal operations team can help. We enhance efficiency, reduce costs, and support compliance so you can run your legal department like a business. Schedule a meeting with us today at bdo.com.
Stephen, one of the things that I thought was interesting when we were performing research, Eric and I, and having come on the show, was that in 2023, when you and Jessica won this Legal Week Leaders in Tech Law Award, you had said something very interesting. Your philosophy, both of you, was that, or it still is, legal innovation means doing something every day that scares you. And I love that because it's true, right? It really is. And agentic AI, it's more and more true that you got to do something that scares you every day. You got to break things, but you have to do it in a way where, and I'm going to use your word here, it's trust. So given the approach that you just outlined of comparing AI contract review outputs to previous attorney red lines, what specific feedback or results have you observed from the attorneys during these trials, and how is that influencing your next steps for AI adoption in other areas like e-discovery, for instance?
We've changed our approach to even how we do these trials over time based off some of the feedback and learnings that we see. Initially, it was like, all right, we start with just these two kind of generic templates that we may not build in any of the localization to them, even though we have some degree of localization on, say, a professional services agreement, might differ just slightly between geographies. But at first, we just put in one, had the team use it. And for folks that were expecting that localization to also be applied, and then it was not, it negatively influenced their experience with that. And so as we moved on, we've made sure to kind of build that in wherever possible so that they can get a true sense of it. We've also found that what's really helpful is when we see that there maybe needs to be a tweak to the logic or to the playbook that's configured during a trial, leveraging that as a real life example of, okay, what does getting this change made in the system look like? Is it engaging the vendor, and how efficiently is that change implemented? And when it's implemented, is it producing the results that we expected, etc.?
My view is that lawyers are going to be able to have this interoperability of data that they've never had before, whether it's from Word documents or structured data environments or ERPs, to tell a better story. And it might not be a tool-centric solution. It might be actually an integrated application layer. So what are you thinking about in the context of where you work, how that might come forward?
Great question. I think that, this to me is the biggest thing that is keeping us right now from realizing all the benefits and potential that, everyone expects to see out of AI and generative AI. A AI agent is only as good as the data that it has access to and the data that it has been trained on. And people care when they're doing their work, they care immensely about, it leveraging content and knowledge that is relevant to them and their work. And that's a difficult thing right now, to essentially give maybe a specific AI agent access to a variety of different data sources. Say for instance, something gets access to all the documents on my OneDrive. Well, I may have, versions of documents of the same document on there, and none of them are the final, say, executed version. That's somewhere else. That LLM or that AI agent is going to pull from those documents, whether I want it to or not. And so we have this like fragmentation almost of AI agents and chat agents in the market where, each individual tool is introducing their own AI agent within their application. It has its own connections. And what I anticipate is there's going to be kind of a harmonization. And I think we're going to see almost like an AI orchestration layer come into play where enterprises are going to have a central AI orchestration layer that is connected to all their data repositories, that then we ask our tech providers who have their own AI agents, instead of connecting to AI as they do now, they're going to connect directly into this orchestration layer that kind of has universal governance by IT, right? It's one central place to manage access, data, connections, etc. It's reminiscent to me a lot of what happened with single sign-on, where there was the same fragmentation. Each application had their own username, ID, password management. And then we saw a rise of these kind of identity management tools that centralized this, introducing single sign-on. There was standardization around SAML, etc. And today, every tech application that I buy at OpenText, we enable SSO. Instead of using username, password, that application connects to our identity management tool. We sign in through SSO. And I think we're going to see that same type of scenario happen with AI and foundational kind of AI models, where we're going to tie these siloed agents are going to connect to a single kind of enterprise AI foundation layer. And I think it's really early on in this, and I'm very interested to see where this goes, because I think this is when once we get that to a degree that it can be implemented at scale and across an organization, I think that's when we're going to start to really see some of the transformative things that we're all hoping for from AI.
Well, okay, so I've got the $1 million question for you, because you're relatively new. Let's say you've been around for a couple, 3 years. and you have some advice to give to somebody who wants to get into this space. What are some of the things that you'd say, hey, really need to be mindful of these things when you're working inside a legal function?
Say this person's coming in with a non-legal background. I would advise them that their outside perspective is a strength and an asset. It's not a hindrance. And anytime we're going to move forward, innovate, transform, whatever buzzword, you need to have people who are taking a different perspective and approach at kind of analyzing the problems we face and putting in solutions. So that outsider perspective is key, and to lean in on that rather than, try to subvert or hide that. I would also reinforce the importance of change management, getting to know your department, the culture within it, and immediately building trust across the department so that the legal ops function, you as an individual, are viewed as someone who is there to help and support and make people's lives easier, because establishing that early on will help significantly when inevitably you are putting something in place or trying to enact a change that may not clearly have benefits to the individuals who are having to adapt to that change.
I love that answer, because trust is really at the core of literally everything that we do. And I think that was fabulous. Before we let you go, Stephen, Eric and I have enjoyed this conversation thoroughly. What are you most looking forward to about attending the LegalOps.com Running Legal Like a Business conference in Vegas next week? And are there any particular sessions or topics or networking opportunities that you're especially excited about?
I'm absolutely thrilled and excited to be attending next week, the LegalOps.com conference. It'll be our third year of attending. I can't speak highly enough about the attendees, the providers, just like the level of expertise. And then I'm blown away each year at the content that's delivered in the sessions. And inevitably, every year I can't attend every session that I want to. And so even when I come back, I end up watching lots and lots of recordings once they're posted on the LegalOps.com website. But I think I'm most excited of just connecting with peers, colleagues, the vendors, and having thought-provoking conversations, whether it be AI, whether it be change management, etc. That's what I'm looking forward to.
Love it. And this was a thought-provoking conversation as well. So Stephen Ripburger, thank you so much for joining us here at BDO's Legal Tech Talk. We're looking forward to seeing you next week. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate you guys having me on.
Thanks for joining us on BDO's Legal Tech Talk podcast.
If you're enjoying our podcast, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe for more episodes.
On BDO.com, you'll find all of our episodes, transcripts, and ways to continue the conversation.
Until next time, this has been another episode of BDO's Legal Tech Talk.